My name is Dr. Cynthia Andrews, and I'm here to talk about the Akashic Record. So, the Akashic Record, the term may not be familiar to you, but imagine a library or a database that holds the answer to every question you ever had, every event that's ever happened and ever will happen, anywhere in the universe from the beginning of time to the end of time. So that includes every galaxy, every planet and event, every life form, every person. And in addition to that, with every person, every deed, word, thought, emotion, and intention that each of you has ever had, that each of us has ever had, is encoded in this record. So imagine that it holds the purpose of life and the path of each individual. And that whole thing is the totality of the Akashic Record. So this isn't a new idea. It's an ancient idea. Most ancient cultures had some concept of this, and it's been called the Book of Life. If you look at Judeo-Christian religion, it's talked about there. It's talked about by Egyptians as the Hall of Truth. But it was named the Akashic Record by the Theosophists in the turn of the 20th century. The term Akasha probably holds the clue as to why they call it the Akashic Record. And the term Akasha itself is a Hindu word. It translates as ether, which is one of the Hindu natural elements of earth, air, fire, water, and ether. So what is ether? What is the Akasha? It's a metaphysical substance that provides both the template and the matrix for physical form. So it's all pervasive, it's permeating everything, and it connects everything together. So the Akashic Record is the imprint of all of our actions on this substance named Akasha. It receives the impressions of everything it contacts, and since it contacts everything, then it has the record of all it is. So you might want to consider this in terms of what we know about electromagnetics. Everything that exists in the physical world is an expression of electromagnetic energy. Houses, people, radioactive material, all of it has a range of frequency that they express within. Even our organs have specific frequencies, and that's the concept of using EKGs to measure the frequency of the heart, or EEGs to measure brain waves. Thoughts and emotions also have their own frequency range that they express within. So information being coded on vibration and within energy fields is not a new concept. Matter is organized in energy fields. You can see this when you take magnetic filings and pour them over a magnet, and they all organize themselves within the magnetic field. You can see this in the gravity field. Trees grow up. We all organize ourselves within this field of gravity. So frequency then carries information, and that information is coded on carrier waves within energy fields, the same way that a radio station codes frequency and sends it out over radio waves, or the same way that your cell phones code your conversation onto microwaves and send it out. We can imagine that the imprints of events that are the records in the Akasha are pieces of information stored as vibration within an electromagnetic field. So a lot of people consider the Akashic Record to be universal consciousness, and you've probably heard the phrase, consciousness is the new frontier, but maybe you're not really thinking, what is consciousness? Or maybe you don't have a good definition for what consciousness is, and that makes sense because nobody really does. The dictionary defines it as self-awareness, implying that the more aware we are of the processes that direct us, then the more conscious we become. Other definitions include the whole of your experience, the whole of a person's experience, the energy or force behind awareness and intelligence, God, the source, the totality of all that is, or the animating and directing principle of the universe, which is the one that I like best. As I see it, the way that I kind of organize this for myself is that consciousness has three components. It's a vehicle, it's a perceptive tool, and it's a force. So if we are spiritual beings having a human experience, as many say, then consciousness, as expressed through this body-mind, electromagnetic body-mind, is the vehicle for the journey. It's the part of ourself that has the ability to process and respond to the physical and spiritual universe. And if we're expanding our awareness to perceive with greater parts of ourself, then consciousness is the perceptive tool that we're developing. And if we're learning to co-create the universe, then consciousness is the force that we're learning to use. So consciousness then is both the vehicle being developed and the I that inhabits the vehicle. So all the descriptions that we have for the record, for the Akashic record, are metaphors. They're images that are evoked to illustrate what the Akashic record is. And these metaphors have evolved with us. They're just constructs. We thought about it as a tablet, then it was thought about as a book or a library, and now it's a supercomputer system. It's a non-physical magnetic type field. It's a dimensional library, but probably the most accurate description for what we have today and how we organize information and understand it is that it's a hologram. It's more than that, it's a quantum hologram. So consciousness itself is also being described as a hologram. And holograms have become so common in our everyday world that we don't even think about what they are anymore. We see them on ID tags, we see them on little trinkets that you have your keychains on, your knickknacks in stores. They're billboards. We have holographic billboards now. And it's so commonplace that we limit them in our mind to just a three-dimensional image. But in fact, they're quite a lot more than that. What's really most remarkable about them is that within each piece of it is all the information for the whole of it. So if you take a holographic picture and you cut it in half, you don't have two halves of a picture, you have the whole picture twice. And if you take each of those and cut them up, each piece will contain all the information of the whole. This idea that it has actually changed the concept of science and how we view consciousness, how we view nature, how we view our own brain. This quote from Michael Talbot in his book Holographic Universe is pretty interesting. He says that Stanford neurophysiologist Dr. Carl Pribram believes that memories are encoded not in neurons or small groupings of neurons, but in patterns of nerve impulses that crisscross the entire brain in the same way that patterns of laser light interference crisscross the entire area of a piece of film containing a holographic image. In other words, Pribram believes the brain is itself a hologram. What's interesting about that to me is that it takes a laser to interpret the information in a hologram, and that means that our brain is like a laser into the hologram of consciousness. And it also means that consciousness itself is more than just a database, it's more than a recording device. It's not static, it's pliable, it moves, it grows. It evolves, and so that means that on a personal level, each one of us is a unique window into the reality of the record, and everything you see, think, and do is contributing to the knowledge base of the whole. You are a unique and important part of it. Theosophists claim that the purpose of the record is for growth, to guide our growth and development, not just ours, but all sentience across the universe. And if the record contains all the possible combinations of events and responses, and it's evolving, then everything that changes within it changes it, and it's an interaction, the one to the whole. So does this mean that consciousness, or does this mean the Akashic record itself is conscious? Does it mean it has self-awareness? Does it mean that the aggregate of all of us together is a self-aware being? Something to consider. And many people say yes, that the record is developing with every action, and that it grows as we evolve. And then the question becomes, what is the record evolving toward, and who is directing the process? And I think the answer has to be all life, all sentience, all of us. Each soul, like a cell in the body of the record, is both being directed by it and directing its outcome. So what that means to me personally, what that means maybe to a lot of people personally, is that in daily life, we're making choices based on creating our heart's desire, and maybe we're also trying to avoid pain and suffering. That would make sense. But they're choices that reflect our personal dreams and our personal desire, and sometimes we consider how it affects our family. Well, we normally consider how it affects our family. We think about maybe how it affects our profession, our community. We think about possibly how it affects our nation, and we're beginning to think about how our actions affect the global family. But do we ever actually think about how it impacts and reflects on the development of consciousness in the whole itself? And if you do think of it that way, if you think of how it creates the quality of the whole, what does that change for you? What does that change for how you are and what you have to contribute? So what I have learned from researching the Akashic record is that everyone, including you, is here at the right time and in the right place to do what it is that you need to do. And if these are difficult times, it just means more opportunity to bring something important to these times and to this place. No one is an accident, and everyone's life has purpose and meaning. In a hologram, each unit has access to the information in the whole. And you may be wondering at this point how you personally can access that whole. Do you have the ability to go in and access it? And the truth is kind of interesting to me anyway, because it's sort of been my life work. Because your body is wired to negotiate the Akashic terrain.